Are you ready for Radiothon? It starts Friday, October 16th at 4 p.m. and ends on Friday, October 23rd at 4 p.m. This year, we're looking to raise $20,000 to reach our 20th anniversary, which is next year. Donations of $50 or more will receive limited edition gifts, and every donation of $25 is entered in a draw to win one of two special prize packages at the end of the Radiothon. And I know some of those gifts, so you want to make your donation. Celebrate local voices and culture by streaming, tuning in, and pledging your support to 91.3 FM CJTR Regina Community Radio. Visit cjtr.ca to check out our new website and for all the details. Whew, on to our show. Today's guest is no stranger to the entrepreneurial scene. She's done some work for the Assiniboia Gallery here in Regina, which was originally founded back in 1979. She followed that work with Hillberg Berk here in Regina, and now she's with Conexus, and she's responsible for the customer experience. So when you think about how your experience with any business, how it touches you, that's what this lady is charged with looking after. So she's got a huge portfolio. So Mary, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Mary Weimer is the Chief Experience Officer at Conexus, and she's going to talk about her role in supporting that thriving entrepreneurial culture. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Barb. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. So I guess, like a little bit about myself. I grew up in Regina. I've lived here my whole life. After finishing my degree at the U of R, I got a job working for the original owners of the Assiniboia Gallery. So John and Monica Kurtz, also a long time Regina family, and worked for them for about a year, and then talked to them about taking their business over and buying their business. At that time, my husband and I were not yet married, but we ended up getting married a few weeks later. So we actually always celebrate the anniversary of the gallery, and then right after our wedding anniversary. So
your wedding anniversary.
It
and it's
easy.
Interesting. Most times you see, somebody will get married and then they go into business together.
Yes.
But you guys went into business together and then still actually got married.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work too well.
I know. I always sort of think like we met. We both worked at the Y. So our jobs, as high school and university students, we were lifeguards and swimming instructors at the YMCA. So I've always just kind of chalked it up to, we started our relationship as coworkers, and
that's right.
So that was just like a natural thing for us. And so we worked together running the gallery, to today. But since about 2010, I have worked at Hillberg Berk, and then now at Conexus. So it's been about 10 years where my day job, so to speak, has not been in the gallery.
Yes. So was there an impetus for you that made you think, I want to do something a little bit different, that led you to Hillberg Berk or led you to Conexus? What was that driving force?
Yeah, my connection to Rachel Melke and Hillberg Berk really started right around the time that I first owned the gallery. One of the first things that I did in early 1999 was get a membership with Women Entrepreneurs of Saskatchewan. Okay. And at the time, Rachel was a university student and she worked part-time in the office. And so it was early on in when I was first a member, and I have a very distinct memory of being invited to an awards dinner. I don't remember which one it was, but Deborah Needham, also from Women Entrepreneurs at the time, invited me to come and sit at this table, and Rachel was there and a few other people, and that was the first time we met. And then just over the years, watched as she did her business kind of from the kitchen table, and then really started to grow it. And then I distinctly remember when she left her full-time job at Women Entrepreneurs and went into business full-time for herself and the whole Dragon's Den. And I just kind of was watching that. And then as it would happen, our businesses physically were located really close. Our gallery's on Smith, her original sort of yellow houses on McIntyre. So we
Right.
just, we'd see each other at things and just always kind of like they would come to openings. And I just kind of followed along with the journey. And I have always been just really interested in business in general.
Hmm.
The art gallery business is a wonderful business to be in because you deal with great customers, you deal with interesting people who are artists, and it's
Passionate people,
very
people
passionate
that are
people.
so passionate about what they do.
Exactly,
Hmm.
like on both ends of it, buyers and makers.
Exactly.
And really, like Hillberg and Berk is very similar.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
it's all the design aspect and the creation, but I definitely just had this desire. I knew the gallery is not a business that's necessarily like a scalable business.
Hmm.
We're not going to have multiple locations across the country. We're not, it's a very good local business, but
Hmm.
that was really not the case for H&B. And I always thought, if I ever go and work for someone else, I feel like it's got to be kind of like another small business.
Right.
And so that's sort of how that came to be.
And that small business became very big
Yes.
when you then joined Conexus.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that transition, because to go from the gallery where, there was yourself, your husband, and maybe a few staff,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then, we'll leap over Hillberg and Berk up to Conexus.
Yeah.
Now you're dealing with, I don't know, what do you guys have now? 750 employees?
Yeah, it's about 950.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're dealing with a huge number of people,
Yeah.
and everyone knows you. And I just knowing the little bit that I do know about you, I know you try to get to know as many people personally as possible, but you can't know all 950. So how did you make that transition?
Um, that was I would say, like in hindsight, it was actually harder than I think I thought, or I realized it would be. And it's interesting, and I think it's almost like when you have a new baby,
Hmm.
you forget. Right? That's why people
That's why
have
you
more
do it again.
babies, right? Because you
Exactly.
forget, oh yeah, that's how this is. So if I think about when I went to H&B, when I went over there, I don't know if there was maybe 10 of us or 15 of us, with the one store,
Hmm.
and doing wholesale. I do remember even at that time feeling like, okay, people don't know me. Like Rachel knows me, but actually nobody else knows me. I have to like build relationships, and
Yes.
and there's that process of building trust where
Hmm.
in the beginning people will give you the benefit of the doubt, right? Oh, she
Yes.
seems nice, and oh, look at her. But
Yes.
like eventually you have to do what you say you're going to do,
Hmm.
and you have to produce results, and otherwise all of a sudden like you start to erode that trust. So went through that whole process at H&B, um, and then of course as we grew, and when I left there was probably about 200 employees.
Hmm.
Now the beauty of a small business is, or that sort of startup trajectory is, I was involved in many of the hires. So
Hmm.
certainly from the head office point of view, I knew everyone. But then of course, as we added stores, it became increasingly difficult to personally know every person. But then, going to Conexus, it was like a whole other level of, because now there's people all over the province, and people from an industry, right? Whereas I was not like a lifelong banker or credit union person. So it's not like I
Hmm.
knew so and so from a conference, 5 years ago or whatever. Like I hardly
Exactly.
knew anyone. I knew actually a few people simply because they were customers of the gallery. That
Okay.
was sort of a connection, and a few people as well who I got to know through H&B because they
Hmm.
were also customers.
Right.
So yeah, it was again starting over.
Hmm.
And what made me successful at Hillberg and Berk, some of it translated to Conexus, but not
Okay.
all of it, because
Hmm.
it's just it's like leading enterprise, like a much larger,
Exactly.
maybe where at Hillberg and Berk I could still be super hands on,
Hmm.
and actually, when you're not able to do that, you sort of realize, oh, actually I actually really like getting in there. But at a level of, say, executive at Conexus, like,
Mhm.
you will not
You can't.
survive.
No,
Like,
exactly. No, if
it's
you try
not
and micromanage,
possible.
it won't happen.
No, you
Exactly.
can't, and
Exactly.
nor is that what you've been hired to do.
Oh,
So, I
absolutely.
had
Yeah,
to
if
learn that, and,
mhm.
it wasn't always easy, but, amazing supportive environment. I always say, like, Conexus reminds me of, people talk about teaching hospitals.
Yes.
Conexus is like a teaching organization,
Right.
constantly, this, interest in evolving you as a person, as a leader, and
Mhm.
lots of support. So I feel like I had a ton of support on that journey,
Yeah.
which ended up, making all the difference. If I hadn't had that, I probably would have floundered and not been successful.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. You would have drowned in
Yeah.
paperwork and emails and text
Yeah.
messages and right, like there would be no Mary standing with us here
I know,
today.
exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that then. You can't micromanage and yet your portfolio, you're the future, the forward-looking portfolio for Conexus's customer experience. And how do you help implement that experience from the executive suite through to grandma taking money out of the bank machine because we're not doing as much in person anymore. And I was in a branch last week actually, and you try and avoid the branches. So I was like, shoot, I actually have to go in. But I give you guys credit. You've got all the arrows and the signs and the ropes and the indoor and the outdoor. Like everything is in place. But how do you make that happen from the executive level? How do you impact that customer experience?
So when when I first started at Conexus, so that was the summer of 2018, so just over
Okay.
2 years ago now, we talked about, Conexus is undergoing a transformation, and we need to imagine, what is the future of banking for our members? What does that look like?
Hmm.
And my observation right from the very beginning was, I looked around and I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of people, that I'm responsible for that are doing things. But I realized that what they were doing was very operational, super important, but just
Hmm.
these things that, like, the engine that keeps the business moving forward. So at that time, the teams were like the marketing team and the PR team and the community investment. Well, those are people that are just like day in and day out, like making work happen.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, well, we can do this other work, but who's going to do it? You know,
Hmm.
and not necessarily just, oh, well, let's just go out and hire a bunch of people. Like, that's not really an option either.
Exactly.
And so in the fall of 2018, Cultivator was just getting going. So the business
Hmm.
incubator was getting a lot of interest. And we had lots of businesses in there, and we did this really cool event called the 24-hour startup.
Yes, I
Basically, it
remember.
was like over a weekend, and it's like, hey, if you're a techie person, a design person, a business person, whatever, and you're interested, come. We'll put groups together, we'll pick the best few ideas, and then spend the weekend. Can you develop like a minimum viable product, and then
Hmm.
have culminate this in a pitch night, and
Right.
then the winner gets, $1,000 or something. And I just remember watching that event and walking away from that and thinking, okay, we need to capture that
Hmm.
energy, enthusiasm, that kind of quick and dirty. We're not
Yes.
making something perfect. We're just like trying something, and then we're immediately getting customer feedback. And it
Okay.
reminded me so much of how we did things at Hillberg and Berk. Like,
Okay.
without even describing it that way, but it was all around experimenting, trying something, and then, oh, okay, no, that doesn't quite, let's fix this. Oh, what are the customers saying? Okay, with constant feedback, just always, like iterating on how we were doing things.
Hmm.
And so came back, and with some of my colleagues, we worked on, an idea of how could we start to embed some of this into Conexus. So in the
Hmm.
beginning, we very purposely created, we looked at lean startup methodology, design thinking, and
Hmm.
agile. And we
Okay.
kind of took all of those and kind of made our own Conexus version of it. And
Right. Yeah.
we named it, we called it Conexus Novus. We recruited for these Novus teams internally, and
Oh,
we
okay.
recruited in a completely different way than a normal recruitment process where they had to come and do a present, like a pitch, basically. We did
Mhm.
10-minute, they pitched, we asked them questions, and we cycled through probably about 60 people that applied
Okay.
internally. We created
Mhm.
3 teams and then on our way. And the whole thing over the course of a year was just basically one big experiment.
Absolutely.
And the whole idea was delivering small slices of value every
Mhm.
2 weeks on a demo cycle, which is very much an agile kind of
Yep.
process.
Mhm.
And then just as we went along, embedding this like human centered design, and the thing that was very cool is involving members in the process, involving other staff that weren't necessarily on one of these teams,
Mhm.
and just really getting people to think about, when you're trying to solve a problem, you're trying to solve it for people. So
Mhm.
what does that mean? It means you have to actually talk to people who are
Talk
going
to
to use it,
people.
which doesn't sound like earth shattering, but it actually kind of is.
Yes.
Because in most environments, back office teams spend 6 months working on something, and
Mhm.
then they deliver it to the front office. Like, ta-da, here you go. Here's your new customer service, experience manual or something like that.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. You
And
get a document out of it.
then right away it's like, oh, well, that doesn't work. Well, this doesn't work. Well, that doesn't work. And so
Yes.
it was like, no, this is not how we do it. We just, are constantly trying things and getting feedback and then creating this loop. And so what was super interesting is when we were hit with COVID. So now it's
Mhm.
March. We had to quickly, stop and change everything, right? We had to figure out how can we safely have employees working, how can we serve members. And what
Mhm.
was super exciting is just starting to see like human-centered design, collaboration across teams. This idea of let's try this, let's
Mhm.
do it, and let's see what happens, and then continually improving on
Yeah.
things, which with the way COVID was, like, there's no other way to do that. We didn't have
Oh,
time. We couldn't
yes.
go sit in an office for 6 months and craft our COVID response. Like, it just didn't.
Exactly. You had 6 minutes in a meeting. Yep.
Exactly, exactly. So that was really, really, we sort of stood back and went, okay, like, without us even necessarily doing anything, these concepts are starting to really be embedded throughout the organization and
Mhm.
across. So I sort of earlier talked about like operational teams maybe versus teams that are doing like R&D or innovation, but
Mhm.
actually seeing those teams really coming together.
Yes.
Um, so that's been the experience over the last couple of years, kind of the journey.
Isn't it interesting how often in a larger business, we've got competing priorities and things seem to take so long, but
Yes.
COVID hit
Yeah.
and organizations had to have a response within hours. Maybe you had a day or two if you were lucky, depending on your organization. You needed information posted. It became the priority. We got in, we did what we needed to do, and then we got back to figuring out how to do our business.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that we don't put ourselves in that situation. Not that we need more COVID,
Yeah.
but put ourselves in that situation more often where we just get in and get done. Create the feedback loop, right? Collect the information we need because otherwise things drag out forever. And
Yeah.
that uses huge resources in an organization. So,
Definitely.
how did your internal teams respond to that? Now is it Novus? Did you
Yeah.
call it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you have these internal teams. How is the organization responding to this more entrepreneurial type culture in a large organization?
I'd say, lots of people really embrace it. Most people, I think the reality of the workplace today is that things change quickly. and plans need to be iterative. Everything that we do, we don't have that same kind of long runway. Like, I think gone are the days where you set your course for the next 3 years and then just
Mm-hmm.
start, ticking the boxes.
Yeah.
This is just, there's the term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Okay.
That is the world that we live in today, a VUCA world.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
it used to be that, we were constantly faced with things that you could maybe describe as complicated problems, like
Mm-hmm.
hard work, but maybe, when you started, you knew what it was going to look like at the end.
That's right.
Well, now today, it's like every problem is complex
Mm-hmm.
because you start and you really have no idea what how are you going to get there? I'm not really sure. What is it going to look like when you get there? Well, that I'm also not really sure. And how will you know you're successful?
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I let you know as I, start to do some of this work? And
Exactly.
that's very hard. Then that's sort of more on an individual level, like how comfortable are you with uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
and maybe not knowing where you're headed. So
Exactly.
that can be challenging, but that's where I'd say in a big organization like Conexus, there's lots of ways we can wrap our arms around people
Mm-hmm.
and bring them training and bring them along the journey, because you
Yeah.
can't, drag people along, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You
Yeah.
need to inspire them to go like, okay, this isn't too scary. I can learn some new skills so that I can
Mm-hmm.
manage, this level of uncertainty.
Exactly. Yeah. Mary, believe it or not, we're just about out of time. We've only got about
Oh,
2 minutes left. I know
okay.
it's the fastest 30 minutes of my life. Um, the cultivator. So tell me
Yes.
how are things going at the cultivator, and can people still work together? Because again, that experience of being together is such an important part of being a startup entrepreneur. How's that working?
So Cultivator within the new building at Conexus, same protocols as Conexus. So the teams are having just, half their team at a time. Again, they're liking, having a little bit of time face to face with people.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to pivot to full virtual delivery of
Oh,
all
good.
of our programs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really positive things is we've been able to extend our reach like across the globe. So where in the past,
Ah.
maybe could we get this person to come to Regina and speak at our
Mm-hmm.
event? The costs, can you get the schedule to work? Well, now it's like, do you have time for a Zoom call?
That's right.
At whatever time works for you. And so
Mhm.
that's been super
I
great.
bet, yeah, and the
And
opportunity that presents, because the speakers that you'd
definitely,
be able to bring
yeah.
in, whole new level. Absolutely.
Definitely, definitely.
Yep.
So cultivator would be like an example of the rest of the economy, and that some businesses, COVID is accelerating their growth because of
Mhm.
what they're happen to be doing,
Yeah.
and some businesses are having to take a look at their industry because maybe it's not relevant anymore, or there aren't
Yes.
the opportunities that there was literally in February.
Exactly.
But I think we've got lots of supports in place to support people on that journey, and it's a going concern, absolutely.
Mhm. Okay. Excellent. So normally at this point in the show, I ask folks to share sort of their contact information, but I don't think you want your email out there. And of course, everyone knows Conexus.
Yeah.
So, how would you like entrepreneurs to reach out to Conexus if they're looking for any support?
Probably the best way would be through LinkedIn.
Okay.
If people just went like Mary Weimer, LinkedIn, like I do a lot of, I would say, communication with business people and entrepreneurs through that. So
Mhm.
it kind of helps keep it out of just like the messy inbox.
Exactly.
It sort of
Absolutely
it's a
hear
bit
you.
of a filter, so that would be great.
Okay, perfect. And of course, Conexus here in Saskatchewan, you guys were at one point about the seventh largest credit union in Canada. Is that still anywhere near accurate?
I actually think it's sixth largest, I think
Okay.
is the number. Yeah, largest in Saskatchewan, and then I believe sixth largest in Canada.
Excellent. All right. Well, Mary, thank you very much for joining me today. We weren't exactly sure how this was going to work out with COVID and everything else, but what I'm hearing in the work that you're doing is you're adapting, right? You're adapting within the organization. People are adapting, and you're thriving. So that's really exciting to hear. If you would like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at barb@googlegirl.ca or reach out on Facebook and Instagram at Above the Fold CA. Just a reminder, you can even submit questions in advance of the live show on our Facebook page. I'm your host, Barb McGrath, local business owner and Google Girl. Remember, you worked hard for your success. Don't keep it a secret. Bye for now.